So this is the second player spotlight, and I am so excited to present this one. I will admit this is not the second interview I did, and I am very excited about other interviews. But getting to ask Nimloth some questions is, I think, really special for a bunch of reasons. Just to babble a bit at the start, Nimloth is one of those people who I didn't overlap with. I occasionally saw someone named Scary Jeff show up, but clearly wasn't playing, wasn't still a big part of the community. But I knew him as someone who had done some of the programming for the site and for TTA Center and other things. But also as just one of those names that came up as this is one of the greatest players. And when Kaus held some votes for greatest players, comparing older players and newer school players, Nimloth was one of those players that everyone had on their list of this is one of the 10 greatest players. And I think even more than that, when you just kind of hear of players from the early days of TTA, you hear Cookie, though he stuck around, you hear Lionheart and Black Bolt, and then they're the two kind of really big names, Doc Evil and Nimloth. And we're going to hear that they played a lot together and they did some programming together and other things too. But Doc Evil has that tournament resume where I made a case for him as greatest of all time, and I think there's certainly a legitimate case to be made there. Nimloth only played 2 tournaments, one of which he made the semifinals in a 7-rounder, so very nice record. And the other one went out early, though that may have been an activity loss. I don't have the records on that. But he didn't dabble much in tournaments, and some of his answers to the interview will get a little into that. This is from the image I have up is from an article he wrote about how to reply to different types of starters. And so his example is he gives, if the opponent starts with a corner starter, figuring out what to do, thinking of what are the kind of thought processes for can I take the card? What is kind of the reasoning to go in 5? What's the reasoning to go in distant sides? What's the reason to go in an opposite corner or adjacent corners? And so he gives a nice rundown, and I didn't really have a good image to show for this, so I decided to go with this one because I thought it was a nice article he did, and Turds has pointed it out as something that was really foundational to him becoming a good player. So yeah, I don't think I can say enough. This is one of the legends of the game. I've been making all these rankings, and I have been making them based on tournament success. But there are a number of players who shone in ways that didn't mean they also had tournament success. And those players are spectacular too. And I think if anyone was making a kind of all-time talent list, Nimloth and Doc Evil, there's a very good case that they're just the top 2, and maybe the top 2 by a huge margin. So really excited to get some answers. Someone I sort of thought would never return or never be seen in More Than Moments. And so I got all eager, and when he did show up, I promptly sent these interview questions, and I'm really grateful that I got answers on them. So with that said, let's read the interview. How would you describe your triple triad player style? I like to play uncommon patterns in cards. Most were so used to playing the same sets and the same combos that they struggled to adapt to a completely different playstyle. I also like to plan ahead, and at some point had the top most used 10 hands of every player on the server written in a notepad, so I could play some closed games with an advantage. Yeah, I really like keeping hands in mind. I think one of the times most hand games are open nowadays, but you can definitely see it with Haley Carnasso, like knowing their hand and knowing like, hey, they have a lot of trouble taking 9s up, and getting advantages off that has always been pretty valuable. And especially in the days when there was set starter. So there were, hands designed for closed with a specific starter in mind and a specific game plan. And this is certainly a good way to take advantage of it. Who is your most interesting opponent? I played lots of games with Mafi Josie just for fun. We made it a challenge to find the most stupid move that still cannot lose you the game instead of winning moves. That helped a lot in the surprise tactics. Yeah, I think this is an awesome training idea, and one like people should mess around with. of looking at a position, what is the kind of strangest or most ridiculous move you think you can get away with? Because even if you can't, you're starting to look for things that are so different than what you normally look for that you can find ideas you wouldn't normally find, see they work, and be able to integrate that into your more general game. I think this is great training plan and a pretty fun way to play. Who is your toughest opponent? I used to play so much against Doc Evil for months that we could not win a game in over a month against each other, no matter how hard we tried. I unfortunately can't remember a lot of players. CC Ace and Triple Triad X used to give me the worst beatings, those especially in closed. What formation or move type do you like more than other players do? This can be for either open or closed, or answer for both. Most important move is always the second or third. Putting a card right next to a starter card confuses most players so much that they think I am playing with them, but until they realize I am secretly setting up a combo chain. Starter card in the corner, second card next to it, without taking the card on one. As far as formations go, see first answer. What's actually sort of interesting here is if we look at this piece, he ends up giving an example where the opponent has gone in 9, and he thinks going in 8 looks pretty decent, but is most likely a tie, and that 2 or 4 is why's my phone making noise? Scam call, great. We will not be one of them shows that take scam calls on air. What's it doing? Okay, that's weird. And he ends up going with this adjacent corner play. But it's interesting because he describes going in 6 or 8 as usually not a great choice, right? 90% of the time the move seems not the best choice. But that was saying take the card. And it's interesting that even here, he does say some of the best moves are going in next to the opponent's starter. And I think I've looked a bit at this example. I forget. The main trick was figuring out which card the opponent had put in 9. Because he doesn't actually say which card they should put there, and then he gives his responses, so I had to figure out which it made the most sense against. And this was a while ago, so I don't remember what card red actually starts with in 9 for the game to make the most sense. I'm going to guess 5, 4, 6, 6, and 9, just looking at it now, but I don't know, it could be 2, 7, 1, 5. Anyway, my point is, it's interesting, because clearly we saw both then, and we see now drawn to adjacent corners, but also seen to the drawn to these next 2 moves. And I think those are pretty rare and an interesting way to play. The other really interesting part of his response is the idea that the key move of the game is that second, third move sequence. And I think this is really when the direction and shape of the game is dictated, right? A first move leaves a lot of things open, but as soon as you play that next move in an adjacent corner or next to their starter, that's what creates the shape of the game. And, a first move can create advantage, but that second and third move creates the direction the game goes and which cards are going to matter and which cards are not going to play well. And I like that emphasis on those moves. What formation or move type do you like less than other players do? I never found synergy combinations very useful. Makes you too predictable. Also, starting in 5 is always pretty boring, as it's bound to be a tie. Favorite way to meet a corner starter, a side starter, a center starter? See answer about move types. Do you have a preferred starter type? Does that change between random and hand games? Does it change between open and closed? Most of the time, I actually follow the confusion strategy and set a random card in a random spot that is not 5. People like to think it is strategy, but I really only start to think about the game at the 3rd card when I start. So this combines interestingly with the previous answer of kind of moves 2 and 3 are the key moves. And move 1, I assume he will discard some ridiculous things, but isn't seeing move 1 as all that important to dictating the action, and that move 3 will be the critical juncture. And with move 1, would rather play something a little odd, get someone out of their prepared patterns, the patterns they're used to. And then move 3 is really that pivot point into the game being played and that key move of the game for the first turn player. What is your proudest triple triad moment? Nothing. I only played for the fun of it and for figuring people out. That's why I never played in tournaments. So Nimloth did play too, but, basically none, and not pushing particularly hard on them. Should Delial be banned? Yes or absolutely? Absolutely. Who was Delial again? So this answer makes me a little sad, because when Nimloth appeared, Delial sent me messages saying Nimloth was someone he had styled his own play after. This was someone who played how he wanted to play. He really likes the kinds of moves he made and loves to make moves like them and has a ton of respect for it. But it's one of those things of generations impacting a later generation, where Nimloth is this fantastic player that I'm sure lots of people aspired to. And, that's around 2006, ending sometime around 2006. And then 2007, Delial suddenly becomes this transcendent player, and Nimloth is gone. And then Delial is this unbelievable player from 07 to 08. And again, later, but those were the 2 years where he was best, I think. And, I was one of the best players of the years after that. And I was heavily influenced by seeing Delial play. And I think Delial could have easily, if Delial, for instance, stopped playing in early 09, he might have no idea who I was, but have been a really important player in my development. And I don't know, I do like how generations work. Should Elemental be abolished? Yes, or immediately? I implemented this functionality for balls. Leave it alone. As said, Nimloth did a lot of the programming, and I think did it very well. What clan will always have a place in your heart? Brotherhood of Seed forever. Never was anywhere else. From main recruiter to clan leader. Player you think is most underrated? That Nimloth guy. Who are your top 3 to 5 picks for GOAT? Only played from 2001 to 2006, TTX to TTA. Doc Evil was the best, then Mafi Josie and CC Ace. I love getting a view on this from an older player. Most of the players I've interviewed are very much on the new or middle of TTA's lifespan players. And so a lot of the answers on these questions are new players. And it's really nice to hear from someone who was around and fantastic in those early days. And here we get an answer. We get a vote for Doc Evil. So if we're keeping count, we have 1 vote for Yojimbo and 1 vote for Doc Evil. We'll see how that continues as we get more voters. We also get our first shout out to Mafi Josie and CC Ace. Ace is one of those players who's around for a super long time, apparently has this unbelievable memory, and was both, I believe, won or came second in one of the TTX tournaments, and later came back in Vincent, having not played for years, and went under a pseudonym and ended up making the semifinals in a tough field in a 7-rounder. So props to Ace. And Mafi Josie is just one of those guys who has racked up lots of semifinals, has, I think, in my opinion, just based on tournament record, obviously you can include other stuff, at any point from kind of 2003 to 2007 or so, Mafi Josie should be somewhere in your top 5 of all time. So he makes a ton of sense to be on this list just based on tournament results. And once you include, playing against them and other knowledge, very easy case should be very high up there. When did you start playing and what was your favorite era? 2001 or 2002. Played on TTX. Most fun was helping balls with the TTA code. Most of my games were playtesting because of that. Favorite rule sets? All of them. The more the better. Have you met any other TT players in person? Freya, Bryce, and Doc Evil. What is your biggest weakness as a player? You can evade the question if you think it's targetable. Overconfidence. So there's the interview. I'm also going to look at a game because he came back and he played 3 games. I will spoil that he did not lose any of them. And if you were anywhere near the Discord, you probably saw what happened in the 3 games. But I am excited to show the one I think was the nicest play, and also follows up on this article because, also to spoil, we will be seeing an adjacent corner play against a corner starter, and it's going to go really interestingly for him. I think watching him play and seeing what he said during the games and how fast he played, it is very obvious he sees the game incredibly quickly and well. Just really remarkable talent. He said something about, I just see numbers, it's my stupid brain. But he very clearly sees it so well and has such strong instincts. And we'll get into that when we show a game he played against Metis, a random game, which I thought was a really remarkable effort. So that's all I got for the interview. Hope you enjoyed it. It's fun to get a blast from the past. I'm hoping that I can snag some more players from the olden days to go with newer players who I'm also looking forward to interviewing. I am trying to grab players who don't kind of exactly overlap with me. So players who are from earlier than me or players who came later, because I think I've provided a lot of me talking as content, and it's nice to get viewpoints and eras that I can't speak to. So thanks to Nimloth for answering these questions, and excited to show you the game he played.